The seats in the stadium were full, every face turned toward the stage, except for the ones that mattered most. My parents were nowhere to be seen. No empty chairs reserved, no familiar smiles scanning the crowd. I walked up to collect my diploma, every step heavier than the last, pretending the absence didn't sting as it did. The next morning my cap and gown still lay crumpled on the floor when my aunt's voice shattered the quiet. "They're going door to door borrowing money in your name." My blood ran cold. I didn't wait. I drove straight to their house, and what I saw there made me understand that graduation hadn't been the betrayal. It was merely a warning of what was to come. Growing up, I learned early that silence hurt less than hope. At my elementary recital, I stood behind the curtain, sweaty hands clutching the edge of my costume. Parents filled the auditorium, clapping, cheering, recording with their phones. My mother's chair remained empty. She showed up halfway through, sunglasses on, claiming traffic had been terrible. She never asked about the song I performed. After that, I stopped telling anyone about recitals. By middle school, the pattern had become part of me. I joined the debate club, made it to the finals, and reminded my parents repeatedly about the dates, scribbling notes on the fridge and slipping reminders under my mother's coffee mug. She moved the note without looking. When I won second place, I brought home the certificate. "Nice," she said, "but don't let it distract you from real goals." She didn't ask what I debated or who I competed against. My father's response was his usual nod, the one that avoided confrontation without solving anything. High school brought no relief. My brother Luke thrived. Varsity sports, weekend outings, constant praise. He was the miracle, every accomplishment celebrated, every failure rescued. When I stayed late at the library for a major project, my mother texted, "Don't be dramatic. You have keys." When Luke brought home average grades, there was pizza and praise. When I made the honor roll, there was silence. Money drew the clearest line. In my freshman year of college, I worked 2 jobs. Early mornings shelving books, weekends doing data entry. Every receipt, every stub, every proof that I wasn't a burden I saved. Meanwhile, my parents told relatives they were funding my education, the sacrifices of parents, the weight of necessity. At Thanksgiving, I sat quietly while my mother spoke loudly of my support, smiling as though she alone kept me afloat. It wasn't the lie that stung. It was the ease with which it was told. Even birthdays were reminders of neglect. On my 18th, I baked my own cake because my parents were at one of Luke's tournaments. They came home late. My father placed a hand on my shoulder awkwardly before retreating. I blew out the candles alone, the soft glow of the kitchen lights doing nothing to warm the emptiness. College acceptance letters and scholarship notices were treated as junk mail, while I worked 6 shifts without complaint, unnoticed, unasked. Somewhere along the way, I learned that being unseen hurt less if I stopped expecting to be seen. This lesson crystallized on graduation day, beneath stadium lights, scanning a crowd that didn't search for me. All the years of neglect pressed into a single sharp understanding. It wasn't new. It was just the familiar pattern, now undeniable. The morning after, the city seemed paused. My gown lay crumpled, tassel curled like a question mark. Coffee brewing, the phone rang. Aunt Helen never called this early. I answered. "They're going door to door borrowing money in your name," said Jade, her voice uneasy. I stood frozen as the kettle clicked off. "They told everyone you have a high-paying job," she continued. "They're claiming you offered to vouch for loans. Some people already gave them money." My stomach sank. My empty graduation row suddenly carried new weight. They remembered me only as leverage. A neighbor's text confirmed it. They were telling lies in my name. I didn't respond immediately. I folded my cap and gown carefully, smoothing the wrinkles, placing it on the chair by the window where sunlight painted stripes across the fabric. I told Jade I would handle it, and for the first time in years I truly meant it. I didn't move for a long time. The apartment held its breath with me. Light streamed through blinds, casting pale shadows over the remnants of a day that had once felt like the end of the line. Now it was a beginning. Not of them, not of their games, but of me reclaiming my own story. The quiet hung in the apartment like it had a purpose, as if it wanted me to notice something I'd overlooked for years. I opened my laptop. My inbox was cluttered with automated responses from job applications. Nothing concrete, nothing certain. Just a string of maybes lined up like waiting dominoes. If the wrong rumor ever spread about me owing money, Or worse, being careless with finances, all those opportunities could vanish. Reputation mattered, especially when you were just starting out. I pulled up my bank statements next. Every tuition payment, every paycheck from the bookstore, every early morning shift, every late-night data entry gig. I scrolled through it all until the numbers blurred together. There was no trace of my parents anywhere, because they hadn't been involved. Not when it mattered. A knot tightened in my throat. Not grief, not anger. Just the hard-edged clarity of reality. My phone buzzed again. More messages, questions about my parents' claims. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened a new spreadsheet and began typing. Dates, names, amounts, screenshots neatly arranged in rows. Everything documented so it couldn't be twisted later. I wasn't sure what I would do with it yet, but I needed it. Aunt Helen sent a voice message next. I didn't open it, just saved it into a folder labeled for later. The kettle on the counter ticked as it cooled, the apartment smelling faintly of stale steam and detergent from my graduation gown. I closed my eyes briefly, letting the air settle. Then I moved deliberately through the apartment, gathering documents from the shoebox under the bed. Old pay stubs, scholarship letters, receipts from classes I'd paid for myself. I hadn't known why I saved them all these years, now I did. I laid everything on the kitchen table. The edges of the papers curled slightly, worn by time. I straightened each one carefully, fingers steady. A strange calm settled over me. Not peace, something colder, sharper. When the folder was full, I zipped it shut, holding it for a moment. Felt heavier than it looked. A text from Luke lit up my phone. Mom says you're being dramatic. Just clear it up. The words tasted metallic on my tongue. I didn't respond. I grabbed my keys instead, the familiar weight grounding me. For years I thought action meant confrontation. Now I understood that action could simply be clarity, moving toward the truth quietly. Outside, the air smelled faintly of rain on the pavement. I slid into the car, closed the door, and sat without starting the engine. The driveway was empty except for a lone recycling bin rocking gently in the breeze. I stared ahead at nothing in particular. The silence inside the car was different from the apartment's. This one wasn't waiting, it was ready. I turned the key. The engine hummed low as I pulled onto the street. The tires crunched softly over scattered pebbles. The city looked the same. People walking dogs, joggers crossing intersections, cars lined at stoplights, ordinary, oblivious. Yet something in the air felt taut, as if a thread had been pulled and was about to unravel. My parents' house was 15 minutes away. I knew every turn by heart, every mailbox, every row of trees changing with the seasons. But today the familiar drive felt strange, like walking through a dream. At a red light, I noticed a family in the next lane laughing in their SUV. A toddler pounded the back of the seat while the mother offered him a snack. The father glanced at her, smiling. Such a simple thing, just being present. I watched until the light turned green, then continued. As I approached their street, a heaviness pressed against my ribs. Not fear, but inevitability. Their house looked unchanged from the outside. Porch light still broken, the chipped planter still there, a faded wreath hanging off season. Ordinary details masking years of absence. I parked, the engine ticking softly as it cooled. Hands on the wheel, I stared at the front door, not planning what to say, not rehearsing arguments or excuses I already knew would come. I was listening to myself, to the quiet in my chest that could no longer be ignored. I unbuckled my seatbelt and picked up the folder. The cool air brushed my cheeks as I stepped out. Each step along the cracked pavement was deliberate. The sound of leaves rustling underfoot, my own breath echoing in the quiet street. Everything felt sharply clear. Before knocking, I took a final steadying breath. I knew something then. Whatever waited behind that door couldn't destroy me, could only expose what had already been broken. The door opened before my knuckles touched it. My mother's expression flickered. Surprise, annoyance, calculation, settling into a tight, forced smile. "Oh, you're here," she said, stepping aside as if granting a favor. The living room was fuller than I expected. A couple of distant relatives sat on the couch, an envelope balanced between them. My father lingered nearby, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the floor. The air carried the faint scent of brewed coffee mixed with something sour, tension perhaps. No one spoke at first. Then one of the women said, "Jade, honey, we didn't expect you today." I held the folder a little tighter, letting silence answer for me. The silence in the apartment was deliberate, almost demanding my attention. I opened my laptop to find my inbox flooded with automated responses from job applications. Empty promises, uncertain futures, a line of maybes like dominoes waiting for a nudge. If a rumor spread about debts or worse about financial recklessness, every opportunity could vanish. Reputation mattered, especially when you were starting from scratch. I switched to my bank statements, scrolling through every tuition payment, each paycheck from late-night bookstore shifts, early morning data entry jobs. Numbers blurred, but the truth was clear. My parents hadn't been involved. They hadn't been there when it mattered. A knot formed at my throat. Not grief, not anger, just the cold, sharp clarity of reality. My phone buzzed with more messages asking me to verify what my parents claimed. I ignored them, opening a new spreadsheet instead. Dates, names, amounts, screenshots neatly organized into columns. Evidence lined up so cleanly it couldn't be misrepresented later. Aunt Helen sent a voice note, but I didn't play it. I saved it in a folder marked simply, for later. The kettle on the counter clicked as it cooled. The apartment smelled faintly of stale steam and detergent from my graduation gown. I closed my eyes, letting the still air settle around me. Then I moved through the apartment with quiet purpose, collecting old pay stubs, scholarship letters, receipts from classes I had covered myself. Years of hoarding documents suddenly made sense. I spread everything on the kitchen table, smoothing curled edges, fingers steady. There was a calm in me I didn't recognize, not peace but something sharper, colder. When the folder was full, I zipped it shut, feeling its unexpected weight in my hands. A text from Luke appeared. Mom says, "You're being dramatic. Just clear it up." The words tasted metallic in my mouth. I didn't reply. I grabbed my keys, the familiar weight grounding me. For years, I equated action with confrontation. Now I understood it could mean something else. Clarity, moving toward the truth quietly without fanfare. Outside, the air carried the faint scent of rain. I slid into my car, closed the door and sat for a moment listening. The silence here was different. Ready, not waiting. I turned the key, the engine hummed low, and I pulled onto the street. Small stones crunched beneath the tires. The city looked ordinary. Joggers, dogs lined up cars. Unaware. But the air felt thinner, taut, like a thread ready to snap. 15 minutes later, I approached my parents' street. I had driven these turns countless times, but today everything felt dreamlike, surreal. At a red light, I noticed a family in the next lane. A toddler pounding the back of a seat. A mother offering snacks, a father smiling. A simple moment of being present. I watched them until the light turned green. Their house looked unchanged. Broken porch light, chipped planter, faded wreath. Ordinary details hiding everything underneath. I parked, engine ticking as it cooled, hands gripping the wheel. I wasn't rehearsing arguments or excuses. I was listening to myself, the quiet inside too full to ignore. I unbuckled, took the folder, opened the car door. The evening air brushed my cheeks, sharp and real. Each step toward the door was deliberate. Cracked pavement, stray leaves, the sound of my breath. Everything felt piercingly clear. I paused before knocking, inhaling one last steady breath. The truth was simple. Whatever waited behind that door couldn't destroy me, could only reveal what was already broken. Before I could knock twice, my mother opened the door. Surprise, annoyance, calculation flickered across her face, replaced by a tight smile. "Oh, you're here," she said, stepping aside as if granting a favor. The living room was more crowded than expected. A couple from our extended family sat on the couch, an envelope between them. My father lingered, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the floor. The air smelled of coffee mixed with something sour. No one spoke. Then the woman on the couch said, "Jade, honey, we didn't expect you today." Everything was poised on the edge of revelation, and for the first time in years, I was ready to see it clearly.